Welcome along to Form Scan, brought to you by IrishRacing.com. I'm Ed Quigley. On today's show, we will be looking at all things to do with the final day of Royal Ascot 2023. It's been a bonkers weekend in many ways. Upset after upset, short price favourites going amiss. All sorts of carnage. Hopefully, more of it to continue because it's been thoroughly exciting to discuss all matters Royal Ascot. I'd like to bring in, of course, Stephen Harris from bettingexpert.com and Irish racing journalist and broadcaster Johnny Ward. Gents, come to you very quickly, Stephen. As I touched upon there, not a week for the faint-hearted. 150 to 1 winner of the Norfolk, of course, triple time, kind of set the barometer for the week when winning the Queen Anne as an unfancied 28.33 to 1 poke. It's been a little bit like that all week.
Yeah, it's been real hard work for punters, hasn't it? It's good for the levy. I should think the big off-course bookmakers have been having it right off. I know that my colleagues on course have found that it's very hard to lay much business at the track. I think the crowd figures are going to be well down, and certainly the betting activity has been a lot lower. But off course, where most of the action happens, that they've got result after result, haven't they? They've been boilovers, short price disappointments. We even had the sort of standing order at Royal Ascot. Jamie Spencer coming from last to first on a 50 to 1 poke on Thursday, which just about sums it up. I think I was with the second, as I always am when Jamie Spencer rides a winner.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, we've had a royal winner as well. There's been a bit, there's been all sorts, and just very quickly, Johnny, just something I was looking at. Someone flagged it up. Charlie Appleby, I don't think he's had a runner finish better than third all week. There were kind of rumours perhaps the yard weren't clicking on all cylinders. It's been that type of week, haven't it? Some of the big reputations of horses have just gone slightly west.
Started off in the first race and it's just continued for him there, where he had two disappointments. Obviously, I wasn't maybe that surprised with Native Trail, but you would have expected more from Modern Games. But I have to say, I was thinking of Stephen when Jamie Spencer swooped up in the closing stages yesterday. Little did I know he was actually on the second, but I had a poor day yesterday. I had a poor day yesterday. I ended up having a few beers with my mates afterwards, watching Leopardstown. Started having a few bets in Leopardstown. Kind of got out of jail, but I was like, Royal Ascot murdered me yesterday.
Right. Well, at least Bertinelli ran well. We were both on that each way, I think. So
he did.
Okay. He did run a good race, but no, it's been a fascinating week. We are recording this just before racing on Friday, just for information purposes. So who knows what lies ahead? Right. Without further ado, let's crack on with the action on Saturday. Kicking off at 2:30 is the Chesham Stakes, of course. Listed contest here over the 7 furlongs. Well, we've spoken about all sorts of boilovers and turn-ups in this year's edition of the Royal Meeting. Well, last year, of course, we had an unraced 2-year-old in the form of Holloway Boy go and win this at 40 to 1. So that kind of tells you all you need to know in many respects. Stephen, very tricky, not a lot of form to go on. And I suppose that the market is as big a clue as any in this type of race. Yeah,
lots of unexposed horses. I do think La Garida, or LaGuardia, however you want to say it, has got out to a very fair price now. I'm looking at 13 to 2, 7 to 1-ish on the exchanges. I think she's a really, really promising filly. I like Richard Hannon's horses run to run. They tend to have an educational introduction, and LaGuardia ran really well when finishing third behind Jabara, who runs on Friday after this recording, unfortunately. But I think that form is good, and LaGuardia shaped really well under a considerate ride. And then next time, at Goodwood, she was pretty impressive. Over 6 furlongs, very strong at the finish under Pat Dobbs. The second, the third, the fourth, I've all won next time out. And I think the key, there's 2 things. She's drawn 17 of 17, which I think that might be all right over high numbers. I'm not sure that's a bad thing at all. There's plenty of pace that side as well. The extra furlong will definitely suit her. There should be loads more improvement to come. And Kevin Stott's up this time, who's a top-class jockey. I think she'll go really close. As long as she can pick her way through late, probably near the rail or a few off the rail, I think she must go close.
Yep, like a reader each way, 13 to 2 for Stephen there. Johnny, a lot of guesswork involved, in my opinion.
A lot of guesswork, but I have to say I do like this race. It's a race that is basically restricted to the sire of the dam has to have won over, I think, 9.5 furlongs or further. So that always kind of it makes it a target race for trainers. I think Aidan O'Brien is brilliant to target in this race. He's won it, 4 times in the last, just looking here, he's won it with Point Longsdale, Battleground. Yeah. He even won it with the Son of Warfront. He's won it with Churchill. September was a complete target for the race. Remember Churchill winning it as well. Yeah. And he has a horse here in Pearls and Rubies that had options. She possibly should have run. We'll record this Friday morning. I think she possibly should have run today. But anyway, she's gone here instead. And you got to look at her run first time out. She's actually by No Name Ever, who's obviously a real kind of speed influence. But first time out, she was sent off 3-1 to beat I Am Invictus, who's trained by Michael O'Callaghan. Now, this is where I think it gets interesting for me. I Am Invictus, first time out, ran at Naas behind River Tiber, who was sent off 2-9, and River Tiber was sent off 2-9 on the basis that he'd already won his debut by 10 lengths. So this horse, who was second at Navan, I thought, or was third rather at Naas, I thought was like a good thing at Navan. Yes, Pearls and Rubies was able to get up and show a real turn of foot. Looked like she wanted every yard of the trip. 7 furlongs, absolutely ideal. I know Aidan has an interesting second runner in the race, but I think she's going to run a huge race. I'd be very disappointed if she's not thereabouts anyway.
Okay, so after all the chit-chat, we've pretty much got the first and second favourites on board in inverted commas, wide open race. But yeah, it should be an informative contest nonetheless. On to the 305, the Jersey Stakes. Now, Covey, the son of Frank O'Rourke on a 4-timer, bound to be popular. Frankie Dettori, his last ever day riding at Royal Ascot. Jonathan Thady Gosden. His horse has been going through the gears, Stephen, and didn't disappoint on handicap debut at Haydock last time out.
Yeah, I don't particularly fancy him. I think he's a typical Dettori underpriced horse. Obviously, he's thriving, he's improving, but he's not straightforward. He wears a hood to get to the start. He was 16-1 on one start, back against nothing. And last time out, he had the run of it at Haydock. I mean, he can win, but he hasn't got a wonderful draw, I don't think. He's drawn 11, I think, of the 11 of 15. And also, as I say, he hasn't seen a rival all season from the front. He won't get an easy lead here, surely. I mean, the other one in the market, the Antarctic of Aidan O'Brien, he made all the running to win last time out. So there is possibilities of getting this beat, I think. The one I landed on was Holguin of Andrew Balding. Andrew's had a frustrating week at Royal Ascot. Coltrane, obviously, just somehow beaten in the Gold Cup. I still can't quite get it.
Had my money, so that was that.
Yeah, I mean, it had to win, didn't it? 2 out. It's a battle-hardened horse against a young, one hasn't run for ages and all the rest of it. So, yeah, he's had a frustrating week. He's also running really well. Holguin's been finishing second 3 times, all in listed company. He's run really well last time, I thought, at Epsom when he was up on a strong pace and got taken on throughout. So he's got stall 1. I think David Pro will have to be quite canny and not get involved in a war on the lead. But on fast ground, I think he's bound to run well. And he's over 20 on the exchanges. I think it's a big price. I was keen to lay the favourite here, I must admit.
Laying the favourite and taking him on with Holguin. The views of Stephen. Johnny?
Yeah, I'm going to go with that Epsom form, actually, and go with Olivia Meralda, who's representing Roger Varian here. And in fairness to the run the last day, probably did suit her the way the race developed. She was kind of able to tip away. But like Steve has set this up nicely in terms of how the race is going to be set up. I actually do quite like the favourite, but you can't justify a bet. There's no way you can justify without insider information a bet on a horse who's rated 100 at 9-4 in this company, considering the fact that, he may be taken on up front. He's a lovely way going now, this horse. Frankel has had an unbelievable week, as has Frankie. I think this is going to be a special day race and whatever happens with Frankie, but you can't justify him at that price. I'm not a massive fan of the Antarctic for whatever reason, for all that he's very solid. He should get 7 furlongs, but I actually do think the race is going to develop for her 10-1 thereabouts. I think she should go well.
Okay, Olivia Meralda for Kevin Stott and Roger Varian. For Johnny, I'm actually very keen on Holloway Boy here. I mentioned Holloway Boy, obviously won this card a year ago when landing the Chesham. Back to 7 furlongs for the Jersey here. I thought it looked like a non-stale.
Did they only enter him because they wanted entries for they wanted to get in free to the races, the owners or something like that? Wasn't that today?
Well, I don't know. I couldn't comment on that, Johnny. But I just thought on the form book, back to 7 furlongs looked like a non-stayer in the Guineas, in my view, on deep ground, and obviously won over course of distance at this meeting a year ago on fast ground. So, and on official figures, is only a couple of pounds off the highest rated in the field. So when we've spoken about Covey, for example, needing to find nearly a stone on figures. I thought Holloway Boy at 14-1 each way. So say back to 7 on quick ground. I think that could be the key. So was my each way angle in there. But yeah, maybe it's a day out for the owners. I suppose time will tell. On to the 340. This is the big one. I suppose in many people's eyes, Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes, Group 1 action for the sprinters over 6 furlongs. A wide open field to it, at least. That is what the market is suggesting. Australian sprinter Artorias, of course, your 4-1 market leader. Highfield Princess, who ran earlier in the week, of course, when touched off by Bradsell at 5s. Wellington for Ryan Moore, 6-1. Kinross, 8. Sacred 9s, 12s. Bar. Johnny, you can lead us off here. Do you have an angle in on this one?
Yeah, I just to totally interrupt here, I had to look this up, and he's the owner of Holloway Boy did admit, basically, I've been coming there for 45 years. I kind of just wanted to I wanted to come in for the day, but I think he actually might have a better chance out tomorrow, considering how well established he is. Do you know the funny thing about Royal Ascot, right? I've never been, and as an Irish person, I find the whole the whole sort of the monarchy is kind of a little bit alien to me, but for some reason you still get sucked up in it. And like when you see the King, how emotional he was with that win yesterday, and the funny thing I was thinking of, the King in that race has an 18-1 chance, like who's basically an outsider, and he's looking at his colours and he's saying, I'm going to win this race at 18-1, and this is the first renewal of this race since the Queen passed away. So I think this is a very, very race for the King, and I had to go back to Choisir when he did the double at Royal Ascot to look at what Highfield Princess has to do, only more because she was second obviously to Brazel during the week. A couple of us thankfully tipped Brazel, but I thought she did absolutely nothing wrong, and she's like 11-2. You're going to get 4 or 5 places. It's probably slightly tougher task, it has to be said, but the form she's in, the way she travelled in the race, she obviously suffered interference late on. I think she's going to run a big race, and representation from around the world in this is just absolutely class. This is what makes Royal Ascot so good. Australia, US, France, Hong Kong, Britain, where are the Irish? We need a good sprinter.
Indeed, yeah, it does have an international flavour, doesn't it, Steve? And you've got Artorias, who was not beaten all that far in this 12 months ago, and it comes here on the back of a much better campaign in regards to results in Australia. As you say, we've got Wellington, the high-class sprinter from Hong Kong. We got the astrologist. We got the home team, the likes of Highfield Princess and Kinross, of course, for Rafe Beckett, who managed to land, was it the 1-2 in the Royal Hunt Cup earlier in the week. So, a trappy old race in your view?
I think this is really hard. There's a lot of early pace on here, isn't there? I mean, Highfield Princess wants to go forward, dominate. Art Power. There's 3 or 4 others. So I was looking for a hold-up horse, and obviously the Australian horse is interesting. I mean, if you watch last year's renewal, he got Jamie Spencer, didn't he? He was dropped him out like they had to go around twice and finished like an absolute train. By pure coincidence, they haven't got Spencer on this year, which doesn't surprise me. They've got a proper jockey on in James McDonald. Fascinating run. I mean, all the Australians on Twitter, Shane Anderson, Tim Carroll, they're going to be with, top hat and tails, aren't they, sitting at home, cheering this one on, getting ready to tell us how good the Australian group horses are if he wins. I sort of hope he goes really well. I'm sure he will. I couldn't dream of backing him at 5-1. But I think the interesting one is Rohan of David Evans, who's got 4 course and distance wins at Ascot. I know that it sounds like it's probably not relevant, but yeah, he's a real Ascot specialist. He was a massive drifter first time out, and he finished 8th, and that was just to blow the cobwebs away, put him spot on for this. Adam Kirby's up. He's a weave-through late sprint handicapper, loves Ascot, loves fast ground. He's got a brilliant setup. He's going to be 16, 14-1. I think he's a good each way bet.
Yeah, 4 wins from 6 starts over course and distance, including the Wokingham last year. That's a pretty healthy strike rate if you're ever going to tag a horse as the horses for courses. I've got small each way play on the bottom one here, the filly Sandrine. She won the Albany 2 years ago. I think a stiff 6 with the mare's allowance. Could see her getting in the picture at 16-1. Just to sum up, Johnny, where are you going for this for the best bet?
I'm going with Highfield Princess.
You are, yeah. Highfield Princess for the home team. Try and I suppose can't be winning the double, but go one better, the non-double, if you like, after an agonising defeat if you backed earlier in the week. Right, on to the 420. This is the Harwick Stakes. I personally, unless the ground is absolutely rattling and connections aren't happy with it, I'm struggling to see how Hookham makes a mess of this. Loves Ascot. Form figures 131. Looked really good when winning the Brigadier Gerard last time out. All in all, I just think the best horse here, and we'll get the job done. Holds pole driver for recent form as well. That horse has got question marks after a year off the track. Any chinks in the armour for you of Hookham, Stephen, or do you think this is a case of the market leader wins?
I think he probably is short enough, to be honest. I think he got the best ride in the Brigadier Gerard at Sandown the other evening. The third, Solid Stone, has come out and got stuffed in the handicap during the week, and I think the fourth, Cash, has also come out and got stuffed. Desert Crown perhaps wasn't 100% right and did too much too soon. So I think you can pick holes in that. I mean, he's a really progressive, loves fast ground. Owen Burrows is going particularly well. I just thought that from another sort of line of form, the bottom one, Free Wind, the filly, she was more interesting at around 3-1 for John and Thady Gosden. She's run 8 times, won 6 of them. One of those wins came at Haydock last season where she got knocked over. I mean, she literally got put over the rail and still won. She returned with I thought she was workmanlike in the Middleton at York on her return, but I think she's entitled to be a bit sharper for that run. And it's just different form lines. She loves fast ground. She's versatile as regards trip, and I think she'll travel really strongly. Maybe she's less exposed than Hookham.
Yeah, that's a fair point. She's potentially still on the upgrade. You say she's won her last 4, that 5-year-old mare, so clearly thriving at present. Johnny, for you, changing in the guard, I suppose, the most pertinent Irish angle in here.
He is, but like on a line through the Derby last year, he's obviously no chance of beating Hookham. Owen Burrows, 3 winners from his last 6 runners, and I'm just looking at Hookham's rating, lads. This is a Group 2, but we've horses here rated 122, 124. That's the aforementioned pile driver, who, as you say, Ed, is held by Hookham. Hookham is only rated, he's only rated £5 lower than his brother Baaeed was at the start of his 4-year-old campaign. So as much as, you know, a lot of the chat was, will Baaeed get 10 furlongs? Well, he should, because he's a brother to Hookham. Hookham's actually like a really, really good horse in his own right. Loves Ascot. There's going to be no issues whatever with the ground or the pace, because changing of the guard, I think he's only one way run. He's quite slow. He's going to have to make this a test. I think Hookham is nailed on to go really, really well here. He'd be my next best of the day.
Okie dokie, yeah, I'm with you on that one, Johnny. I'm weighing in with a market leader in the 420, but Stephen flagging up the claims of Free Wind, riding on the 5-timer. Will we see another Frankie Dettori flying dismount? Onto a real straightforward assignment at 5 o'clock. It is, of course, the Wokingham. I mentioned Rohan got the job done 12 months ago in this. Just the 28 runners to sift through would be the word I knew, Stephen. I mean, we're looking at the market, wide open field to it, as you would expect. Orazio for Will Buick, 6-1. Kanjar at 11-1. Probe, the same price, or is being backed, actually. One of the market movers this week. Chipstead, the same price. 14's bigger. I'm just looking for those at bigger prices who are being backed. Mr. Wagyu in for a little bit of support, being clipped into 16s in a few places. This is tricky, isn't it? Is this one to go and get yourself a diet lemonade or like the barbecue?
Yeah, but the only thing, I think if you can get extra places, these races can become punter friendly. I mean, I've seen 8 places around with some of the bookmakers, but you certainly get 6. They're all falling over themselves to take your money, and of course they've kept most of it this week as well, to be fair to them. But I do like Probe. Ex-Dermot Weld, not many trainers improve horses from Dermot Weld, but Jenny Candish has improved. I mean, he's been a bit of a revelation. He's had 4 runs, 2 wins. He was really impressive at Newmarket in May. Not many horses come from that far behind to win a competitive sprint at Newmarket. And last time out at Epsom, he was really well back, but I don't think he handled the track. He finished with running left in the tank. It was just one of those, you know, they run them in about 58 seconds, don't they? And he never got involved, and he was rolling down the camber and finished with running left. She's booked a Ryan Moore for this as well, which is interesting. Got a high draw, masses of pace to aim at. I think if Probe can weave his way through late, he's bound to run well.
Right, Probe for, excuse me, for Stephen there. Johnny?
Yeah, I wouldn't actually, I wouldn't discount a horse being improved out of Dermot Wells as well. It has actually happened before, and as much as he's a legendary trainer, yeah, that wouldn't be a worry for me, Steve. I'm going to go with King's Lynn here. Obviously, runs in the King's colours. Andrew Balding, 28 runners since his last winner, and he was a 2-5 chance. But in fairness, he's been a little bit unlucky. And this horse is quite solid. He's down to a mark of 107. Remember, he was actually running blinder in the King's Stand in 2021. On the peak of his form, he's kind of one of the class acts in the race. But What are we looking for each way places here? We have up to 8, I think, and you might need them.
Yeah, absolutely. You might need them. I got 2 tentative plays versus the field. Fresh is a horse, Stephen, we've put up on this show on a few occasions last season. I wonder, with Fresh, the horse is either gone or is incredibly well handicapped, and I suppose you won't know until they cross the line which way we're going. But Fresh has a very good record at Ascot. Never went a yard in the Victoria Cup last time out, but has eased down the weights. The other was, really grabbed my eye, was Mum's Tipple. Frankie Dettori been booked to ride for Richard Hannon. An individual good form at this track, previous course of distance winner. You go back about 3-4 years ago, I'm sure we'll all remember Mum's Tipple winning that huge sales race at York when winning by about 19 lengths. And I think they turned down telephone numbers in the sales afterwards to not get rid of that horse. But a fascinating sort on back form. Frankie Up, previous course of distance winner. But it is that type of race. Don't be afraid to play 2 or 3 horses, 2 or 3 selections, and back them each way if you can get the good place terms, as Stephen always flags up, rightfully so. Right, on to the Golden Gates stakes here at 5:35. Now, Johnny, I want to bring you in because you could talk about the protagonists in a minute. By far the most interesting runner, in my view, in this lineup is Cuban Dawn. Jim Bolger, with this Teofilo colt, Holly Doyle booked to ride. I don't know if that's ever happened before. Maybe you could fill me in. Holly Doyle riding for Jim Bolger. And maybe Jim Bolger's only a runner this week as well. I thought this Cuban Dawn looks really good bet at 22 to 1. 4th to Pannington on debut when thrown in the deep end in a listed race. And on the last 2 starts, has kind of got going with a wet sail inside the closing stages over a mile. Up to 10 furlongs for the first time on handicap debut here. I thought 22 to 1. That was a real significant runner. If you can give me a bit of information about that one. And, of course, the Irish have a strong hand in this, don't they? With Canute, your market leader here for Aidan O'Brien and Ryan Moore.
They do, and Cuban Dawn couldn't be more of a Jim Bolger horse by Teofilo out of a Dawn approach mare. But unlike Jim Bolger horses, I have to say it, he's the one trainer I find virtually impossible to predict his horses. Well, certainly one of the ones I find. This horse has been really consistent. Now, Jim's stats this season are... I think he's at 5% back. I was looking at today, in the early 90s one season, he was at 20%, but he's nearly always been double figures. He's hit into 8% in recent years, but this season he's probably had a lot of place horses. Coro's going to run from actually today. She might run well, but this horse is quite interesting, to be fair. But I mean, Canute, I think he's named after an old King of England about 1,000 years ago. I did the Race and Post spotlights when this horse ran at Navan. He was running against a horse called Sub-Zero, his stablemate, and before the jockeys were booked, I thought Sub-Zero would be ridden by Ryan Moore. They didn't do that. They put him on Canute. He was sent off odds on. He absolutely hacked up. He's gone up from 82 to 93. We saw a horse win easily yesterday who was having gone up a little in the second handicap start and bolted up. This is actually his 3rd handicap start because he was very eye-catching over 7 at Curragh. I think he's very interesting up 93. I think he's going to... He's probably been laid out for this. He needed to win at Navan. He probably didn't need to win quite as snugly as he did, but he's still only gotten £11. And out of Alice Springs as well, serious pedigree, this horse.
Fascinating stuff. And yeah, you got me Wikipedia in all the Canute knowledge. Now, born in Denmark, Canute, and died in Dorset. Canute, the great Canute, was the King of England, King of Denmark, and King of Norway. So he did the rounds, put it that way, until his death in 1035. But there we go. Stephen, 5:35, wide open looking race here.
Yeah, I think there'll be a horse here who'll be a lot shorter, and that's Knockbrex, who's around 5 to 1, bigger on the exchanges at the moment. Charlie Johnson's horses are flying. He's a very progressive horse. He's a typical Johnson galloper. He wants the lead. I think he'll be able to get across onto the road. He's got a reasonable draw in 7. Dettori's booked. That won't help the price tomorrow, but I think if you took 5 to 1 now, you'd be in a good position. He's very progressive. There were 2 winners behind him at Pontefract back in April. He then went to Haydock. He finished 2nd from the front behind a horse called Gregory, who absolutely sluiced up earlier in the week, very impressively, landing a massive gamble. He's very useful. That's good form. And then last time out at York, he had At Zany up in a bad draw, wide. He didn't break particularly well. He rushed him up very wide, racing freely, disputed on the lead. And I thought he ran an absolute screamer to finish 4th. That was on his handicap debut. The winner Chess Piece, we know, we were both with, I think, earlier in the week, ran a blinder in the Queen's Vase. So it's really good form. And I think in handicaps, there's loads more to come from Knockbrex, who's just a young progressive galloper. I think he's the sort of horse that might end up sort of 9-4, 2-1. Dettori's on him. It's 5:30 on a Saturday. I think if you take 5-1 now, you'll be in a strong position by the time they jump off.
Yeah, absolutely. Knockbrex for Stephen. Yeah, down in trip. I saw a replay of that York race last night, as you say. Just got outstayed by Chess Piece over a mile and a half, back down to the 10. That could make all the difference here. So, yeah, wide open views, as you would expect in the 5:35. We'd better get on to the finale of the meeting, the Queen Alexandra Stakes. Stratham heads the market here for that man, Willie Mullins. Will Buick on board. Your 9-4 market leader, looking to win it again. We've got Dawn Rising 7-2, Run for Oscar 4s, Falcon 8, 13-2, Typewriter 10. Stephen's favourite horse, Goshen, 18-1. Oh. And then we're into 20-1 bar. Johnny, Stratham, trained by Willie Mullins, officially the best horse in the field on figures, last year's winner, etc., etc. Does he just turn up and win?
I don't think it's as straightforward as that. He's a horse I find hard to predict. He's probably just not that good over jumps, but in general, he's a bit hit and miss. Obviously, you mentioned he won the race last year. I spoke to Patrick Mullins on Monday at Kilbeggan. I thought Frankie was going to ride this horse, and I thought this was going to be like, if you're not a jumps fan and the race doesn't float your boat, like Frankie riding, this is his last Royal Ascot ride. But anyway, he doesn't have a ride in the race. Dawn Rising, though, lads, I didn't realise this horse actually brother to Sovereign, who won the Irish Derby. But if you go back to when this horse won over hurdles, when he beat American Mike at Navan in November, it was a 4-horse race, and this was at the time when American Mike was considered, if not the next big thing, the second coming after Facile Vega. And I think he went 499-1 in running and ended up winning by 8 lengths in a 4-horse race. He looked absolutely hopeless coming into the race. Now, he should never have gone that price because he's basically slow and he was staying on whatever it is. But he's a dour stayer over hurdles. And this looks a perfect test for him. Ryan Moore in the plate, what's not to like?
Indeed, third in the Lawlers of Naas. It's always good to get some kind of Cheltenham Festival form lines thrown into this one. But Stephen, I mean, you with or against the favourite 2-1? If you are against Stratham, who are you taking him on with?
Well, I think that Charles Burns' run is interesting here. I mean, he's a really useful horse over hurdles, and he stays 3 miles well. He's running in all those top staying races over jumps last season. He was quite eye-catching. I think he was in the same race as Stratham first time up at Leopardstown. Where Stratham, actually, no, that's wrong. Sorry, Dawn Rising was in the same race as Stratham at Leopardstown. But the Charles Burns horse was really eye-catching over a mile 4. Basically, a big drifter dropped out and having a run for fitness to put him spot on for this race. The only negative is, I mean, I'm not rushing to have a bet. I think he's been 7 or 8-1 earlier in the week. And he's now sort of 4-1, 7-2. So maybe the juice has gone out of his price. I mean, I think Stratham's a similar profile in the way he's won this the last 2 years. He is now 10, Stratham. That's one negative. I think they just had that run to put him spot on last time out, and he's going to come back and try and win again. But, they're not machines. He'll have had loads of issues, Stratham. He hasn't made it to the track that many times in the last few years. So maybe the Charles Burns horse is slightly better value, but it's not a betting race for me, I must admit. I'm amazed. I was going to say that about Dettori, because Dettori rode Stratham in Ireland last time out, and you'd have thought it was all being set up for this being his last hurrah at 6:10 on Saturday. This would be his last, and they put Buick on him at the moment, so I was surprised at that.
Maybe Frankie's got to get away early in the chopper for his leaving do somewhere. Maybe that's what needs to be done. But as you say, Stratham looking to win the race for the 3rd time, but the panel are taking him on. Right, time to nail the colours to the mast then, gents. And Stephen, can I have your best bet and your next best on the final day of Royal Ascot, please?
Yeah, it's been a tough week for punters, but I think LaGuardia in the 2:30. She's a really likeable filly. The extra furlong will suit her. Form has worked out superbly, and Richard Hannon's do improve run to run. She's around 7-1. I think that's more than fair. And my next best in the next race, the 3:05, I'm looking to take on the favourite here. I think there could be a war on the lead, and maybe Holguin with David Probert from a good draw, get a bit more of a patient ride and pick them off late.
2 value plays for Stephen there. Thank you very much. And Johnny, for yourself.
Yeah, maybe an each-way double, but it's going to be a short price each-way double. Pearls and Rubies in the first and Hookham in the Hardwick would be my next best.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm going Hookham in the Harwick, but in the 5:35, miles really are drawn to Jim Bolger, Holly Doyle teaming up Cuban Dawn on handicap debut, 22-1. I think that horse is a big price. My thanks to Johnny and, of course, to Stephen for all their contributions throughout the whole of Royal Ascot. Win, lose or draw, it's been absolutely spectacular. My thanks, of course, to you at home for watching. Don't forget to keep checking out irishracing.com and all the social media platforms for all the latest news and views and all the fallout from Royal Ascot 2023. Thank you once again for watching. Stay tuned. Bye for now.